Perched high on the hilltop, watching over the meadow, lay the guardian of Rusty's family. Lofty and robust it stood. It was their shelter. By comparison, this house was a behemoth to others. Their mansion flourished with hallways, with twists and turns. Getting lost in it wasn't an abnormality, not even for Rusty and his family. Rusty's family was rather well bound. They were a typical mundane family that practiced the simple rituals of the standard American household. The family ate meals together. On Fridays, they all nestled in front of the television to view a film. And even on Sundays, they all covered themselves in fancy uniforms and visited the house of the Lord. There was nothing truly outstanding within his family, disregarding the massive fortune and wealth they bared. Their stance in wealth was due entirely to his father's occupation, which still remained a mystery to the family. The upcoming weekend, Rusty's father had a business meeting. As his father left, his mother routinely prepared dinner. Nothing had altered from their standard Friday rituals without the presence of their father. They continued by watching a film, and then were soon ready to sleep. In the middle of the evening, Rusty's mother voyaged through their monstrous mansion, checking for misplaced items and to assure Rusty was sleeping. She arrived at Rusty's bedroom door. Her eyes tracked the pale white door down to the seam at which it met with the bland white carpet. Her eyes were greeted with a dim light, barely escaping the reaches of Rusty's room. She had figured Rusty's father had been on a trip, so he would attempt his best to stay up after his bedtime. She echoed her voice to Rusty's door instead of entering. "Rusty, I see you're awake. Go to bed." She saw a shadow swiftly move as it was followed by a rumbling on the floor. The light hastily went off. She was content at him being obedient. She turned and started walking down the hall. She was startled quickly. Her ears were exposed to a familiar voice. From the other end of the house, she heard Rusty yell, "Sorry, Mom. I'll go to bed at the end of this episode, I promise." She was filled with disbelief. Her stomach felt weightless, overpowered in fear. She gazed back to the door, which now seemed like a shield protecting her from whatever lay in her son's bedroom. She knew she would have to open the door. She grabbed the nearby kitchen knife, gripped tightly as her last defense. She sluggishly turned the knob. Her heart raced, sweat spewed from her forehead, her entire body shook uncontrollably. She pounded the door open. Her head looked back and forth, up and down. Her eyes scanned the room in every crease and every corner. But still, it was empty. She remained baffled by the incident. She then decided it must have been some sort of prank her son was pulling. She said in a somewhat mocking voice, "Ha ha, Rusty, come on. Tell me how you did it." She hears no response. "Rusty," she says in what still sounds like a mocking tone. "Rusty?" Again this time, in a slightly questionable tone. Soon she looks in fear down the hall and begins to run. Her calls turn to screams as she's yelling, "Rusty! Rusty!" She arrives at the room his voice originated from. No sign of her son in the room, and the television seemed broken. There was an irritating, loud, fuzzy noise emanating from it. The room filled with the lights of the TV. As she moves to turn the machine off, she can't help but wonder why it was set to static. She tried to find the input that it was on, and it should have been playing the VCR. Her attention shifts to the VCR, and as she pressed the button to eject whatever was inside, she noticed it was a family tape from years ago. She flipped it over. Someone had scratched and ripped up the tape. her attention soon shifted again as she heard the noise of footsteps pattering upstairs. She looked upwards, but was shocked much more by something else. As she looked across the room, all the family photos, all the pictures, were gone. Replacing it were repulsive, hateful words written in red. "Leave our house." Her vocals shot up as she screamed. Her shriek must have been heard throughout the entire house. As she turned to run, she bumped into something and fell to the floor. She gazed up and recognized her son's face. "Mom?" Rusty asked. "What are you doing?" His mother grabbed him, and they ran to the closet. She locked the door from the inside. She sat and explained the oddities that occurred. Both sat in disbelief, the mother attempting to call the father several times, but he didn't respond. As the mother fiddled with her phone, Rusty noticed something peculiar. He pointed in her direction. She looked where he was pointing. In the location was a shelf in the closet. The closet they locked themselves in. The door hadn't been opened, hadn't been closed since they entered. On that shelf laid her kitchen knife, and above it was a message reading, "Forgetting something?" The mother looked away and began bawling. She felt helpless, trapped in the closet, unsafe from any intruder. She decided it was time to call the police. As the police answered, they asked her name and her address. They promised to arrive as quickly as possible. She remained on the phone with the respondent. As she spoke, there was creaking and rumbling throughout the entire home. The walls emitted dust, the ceiling rained pieces of wood. However, it was nearly invisible that they were encompassed by darkness. As Rusty's mother spoke over the phone, the man said, "Ma'am, it looks like we've arrived at the address." "Thank God." He spoke again. "However, are you sure this is the correct address?" Her heart sank. Yes, of course. Why would you ask that?" "Look, if this is some kind of prank, please don't waste our time. The address you gave us is one of the Corleone estate. It's a mansion that burned down more than 50 years ago." Trembling, she spoke, filled with uncertainty. Are you sure?" "Of course, ma'am. In fact, it was burned down by some husband or father, whoever was living here." Rusty's mother dropped the phone. Rusty looked at her. "Mom, is everything all right?" "Yes." His mother was speechless. She looked down at her son and spoke. "Get the hell out of here." Both seemed teeming with new emotion. They stood up, ready to escape the mind-boggling house. Rusty flicked the lights on, and as they opened the door, their newfound emotion was quickly crumbled. The room they were originally in was entirely different. The walls were more stretched, the ceiling grew higher, the wood surrounding them looked older. For a moment, his mother and he lay defeated, but she knew that she had to continue fighting. She reached for the door, but it would not budge. She pounded again and again, and soon was halted by a familiar voice. Her husband yelled, "Don't worry, honey. It only hurt for a bit." Rusty and his mother screamed. The room they sat in was soon filled with the stench of kerosene fumes. Flames went up, the scorching fire raged. Rusty and his mother were encompassed in the bright orange blaze. The house burnt to the ground. "50 years pass. A new estate is built. A new family filled it. They seem happy on the lot, and rather pleased with the property. Things seem to be going well. They follow the rituals that many American families did. All but one. The father is a busy man. So busy, in fact. he very soon would be leaving on a business trip.